Thanks, Sean. All right, welcome everyone to the Wallet Interoperability Special Interest Group call for April 21st, 2025. Today on the agenda, we will hear about the new TypeScript labs that are new to the OpenWallet Foundation related to DCQL, OpenID Federation, and OpenID4VC from Timo Glastra. So thank you so much for joining us to present on those. Looking forward to it. Let's see, we're recording this call. It will be posted on the meeting page later today. We are following the Linux Foundation antitrust policy and the OpenWallet Foundation Code of Conduct. Let's see, are there any announcements or introductions before we get started? Yes, go for it, Sean.
Hey, just three real quick things. I'm going to put the link to this page that Shar is projecting on the screen into the chat in a second. But we have a Discord. That's where all of our real-time conversations are happening. There's a link to that. We have a community calendar. This is one of numerous meetings we have every week across the different parts of the OpenWallet Foundation. We would love it if you attended. This week's a little funky because folks canceled some meetings due to the holiday weekend, but we've got an LFX meetings calendar I'll share. There is a playlist. So all of these are recorded and we post the recordings to the OpenWallet Foundation YouTube. And that playlist it's going to have this recording. It's going to have last week's. It's going to have the last 6 or 7 weeks. I think we've got almost every single one of these in there. It's a great knowledge resource if you'd like to learn more about what this community is talking about and the folks who've been presenting here. Two more things. There is a session on Wednesday, 4/23, India's Leadership in Decentralized Technologies. This is a 3-part, I think it's like an hour and a half, so a half-hour each section. But the two of them, one is on real-world blockchain case studies in the public sector, specifically around decentralized identity. Ironworks, where Ajay joined us a couple weeks ago on this call to show what Credible is doing. DigiYatra, who's doing amazing stuff with Occupy and a couple of other projects that are part of the OpenWallet Foundation. Infosys, Print2Block, and Julian Gordon from the LFDT will present on that. And then there's a decentralized identity deep dive featuring Tata Consulting Services, IDS, Cripsy, and Hart Montgomery, who I work with at the LFDT. He's the CTO of the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. They're going to have that session. And lastly, the Global Digital Collaboration is happening July 1 and 2 in Geneva, Switzerland. We have a link there if you'd like to register. That's it. Thanks, Shar.
Awesome. Lots of cool stuff coming up. Thank you. All right. In terms of upcoming topics on this call, we're going to talk about payments in the EUDI wallet in production. We're going to discuss the test harness and tooling for the IIP, EUDI Wallet Consortium and their large-scale pilots, the MOSIP NG wallet. So yeah, those are just a few of the upcoming topics. So yeah, join us for those as well. Let's see, in terms of project updates, on Occupy release 1.3.0 RC1 is out. This is continuing the removal of AIP 1.0 protocols from core to plugins. We didn't meet last week, so fewer updates there. But if anybody else has other Occupy updates, Timo, I don't know if you want to jump in with Credo updates. That'd be awesome to hear.
Yeah. So I think, we've been working hard on updating the OpenID4VC integration with the latest spec changes. And we're getting ready to merge the new KMS interface we have in Credo, updating it to be a lot more generic, supporting any crypto algorithm you want to use, and also dynamically allowing different backends. So you can link it with Eris Ascar, for example, but you can also integrate the remote KMS, such as Google Cloud or AWS KMS, giving more flexibility there.
Nice, awesome. Thanks for that update. All right, any other updates on any of these projects or announcements before we jump into the presentation? All right, with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to you, Timo.
Cool, thanks. Let me share the slides in the chat. I will share my screen. All right. Is this visible?
Looking good.
Yes, looks great.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so yeah, thanks for inviting me to the Wallet Interop SIG. I'm going to give a presentation today about 3 libraries we recently contributed to the OpenWallet Foundation, namely DCQL TS, OpenID Federation TS, and OpenID4VC TS. And just want to share a bit of like what are the libraries, generally how can you use them, and also how have we been using them, or have they been adopted, and what are the interoperability results we've been able to achieve with them. Short intro about myself is I'm Timo. I'm one of the co-founders of Animo, which we started 5 years ago, which is sort of like consultancy, development, research in a lot of decentralized identity technologies, and we focus a lot on open source implementations. And over the years, we started working on Credo, which is an open source TypeScript framework at the OWF for building decentralized identity solutions, where we build most of our tools on. And then we also have Paradigm, which is a cloud managed or on-premise product, which allows you to build decentralized identity solutions through simple APIs that supports most of the standards. And usually we combine all these open source tools and in everything we build. If anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll answer them in the meantime, but otherwise we can also spend some time on questions at the end. There's 4 topics I would like to discuss today, which are the 3 new lab projects I just introduced, and I also quickly want to talk about another library we've been working on for the digital credentials API, which is very related to the other lab projects, and I think we'll probably propose at some time to also move that project to OWF as a lab. So I'll just go through them one by one and discuss a bit about them. So first one I want to talk about is OpenID4VC TypeScript. This is a library we've been working on, which aims to provide a very generic implementation of the OpenID4Verify credential standards and allow issuance and verification of credentials. But with it, we wanted to make sure that it stays generic and doesn't do too much, because that's sometimes we also notice in the Credo framework we maintain is that at some point you do everything, and that is nice, but that also makes things less reusable. And so we just wanted to really focus on the OpenID4Verify credential protocols here. So we have basically 3 packages that it consists of. We have a lower level OAuth 2 package, and that's basically a generic implementation of a lot of the OAuth 2 standards, where OpenID4Verify credential issuance and OpenID4Verifiable presentations is built on top of, and it supports things such as post authorization request, PKC, DPOP, demonstrating proof of possession, and a lot of the things you need for basic OAuth 2. And then we have 2 libraries that we built on top of that. So we have OpenID4Verify credential issuance, and it provides an implementation currently of 4 different draft versions, 11, 13, 14, and 15. Hopefully soon we can reduce that number again once the specifications go to final. And we provide everything on the protocol level. So it allows you to create credential offers, validates credential requests, and create credential responses, and handle the different flows, such as the pre-authorized and the authorization code flow. But there's no credential format implementation. which you need to provide. So you can use this with, there's a library at OWF as well for SDJ4VC, for example, and you can easily integrate this library with the SDJ4VC library to get the full requirements you need. And it also doesn't handle, for example, the server hosting of the endpoints, which you also need to integrate. So it is a bit more work to adopt these libraries, but you do get like a very thorough implementation of the specifications that handle all the validations that must happen. But you're still in control of how you want to host the server and all of your business logic around it. Recently, for the OpenID4VC, we also added support for wallet and key attestations, which is relatively new in the specification and allows an issuer to verify it's interacting with a trusted wallet. And it also allows an issuer to verify that the keys a wallet sends in a request to the issuer are also trusted. What we don't have yet, and that is what we're still looking at, is also more wallet provider focused component, because we support creating wallet and key attestations, but how you get these in the wallet is not standardized. So there's still some complexity there. But for the whole protocol part, what is specified in the OpenID4VP or the VCI specification, we support that part. And then the other library is OpenID4VP, which handles the whole presentation part. So we currently support also a lot of drafts there, basically 18 to 24, which are the drafts that are currently being used in the wild. 18 being still used a lot because that is the one that is referenced in the ISO 18013-7 specification, which basically specifies how can you present MDLs and MDocs over OpenID4VP. And then 24 is a very recent one that we've seen being adopted now as well. I think interesting change in the latest draft, not in 24 yet, but is that they removed the presentation, the diff presentation exchange query language. They had two query languages for a while, but now there's only DCQL. For now, we'll keep supporting both because we already support PECs. That's something that will change in the future. And also with this library, it really focuses on the OpenID4VP protocol level. So we don't even provide the query language implementation because we have another library for that. So you can plug in either PECs or DCQL if you want, and also no credential format implementation. So you can use it with SDJ4VC if you want that, and use an SDJ4VC library or another MDoc library. But that way we can keep it really, unopinionated and more focused. And some other things we've recently added is protocol level support for the digital credentials API to natively request credentials from, for example, the browser and the Android system. This also requires, of course, more native integration, but everything we need to do on the protocol level in OpenID4VP to support this API, we support. So that's a bit of the general structure. And by building both libraries on the same core, we get to reuse a lot of the OAuth2 base components. There's definitely like the OpenID4VC and OpenID4VP is very different than OAuth2 because it's such a different way of working, but there's still a lot of things in OpenID4VC and OpenID4VP that are based on OAuth2. So by doing this, we get to reuse a lot of components, and it also helps a lot with integrating for the different libraries together again. Because in OpenID4VC, there's a new experimental feature that will soon land in the spec, probably where you can do, as part of an issuance process, you want to do a verification. So to authorize a wallet to request a credential, you first wanted to complete an OpenID4VC presentation, and once that is done, you can start the issuance process. And by integrating these libraries, we can very easily and in a nice way allow that flow to be implemented. So as I said, it's more lower level building block, and you need to provide a lot of other things yourself, such as the credential formats, the crypto implementation, trust verification. For example, do you want to do X509 certificates or DITs, or do you want to use OpenID Federation, and also the state management. But this does make it perfect, for example, to be integrated into a framework such as Credo, where we already had most of these other components in place. We just want OpenID4VC. But it can also be integrated very nicely into proprietary products, I think, where you do want a lot of control over how you want to implement these protocols. But you also don't want to start from scratch and want to build on something that at least has the foundation in place that you can build on. So I think for this library, we don't have that much adoption yet in terms of other people using it. We have some interest, and I know some organizations that will want to build on it. But we do have great results for Interop, I think, that we've been working on over the past months. We have been testing it through the integration into Credo, into our Sprint EUD prototype wallet, and Paradigm, as well as the potential large-scale pilot in Europe. And finally, recently, we've also been doing the OpenID Foundation certification conformance test suite. So that's a lot of areas we try to test the implementation, see if our implementation is correct. And in a lot of places it is, in a lot of places also it wasn't fully. But it's very nice that we've already been able to address a lot of these issues. And now we notice that with new Interop, it's getting easier and easier. So that's very nice. That's like you can run your implementation against a completely new implementation and it just works. Is happening more often now than it used to be. And I think for a specification to be good, it should be possible for two parties to implement something and it just work, which in practicality never happens. I think especially with draft versions, because there are so many different draft versions and everybody implements like a flux of different draft versions. And there's also things not specified yet. But I think with nearing a 1.0 implementation, I think a lot of the foundation is now, I think, relatively clearly defined in the specifications. But they also added a lot of new features, which of course haven't had that much implementation experience yet. So we'll probably have to see for those, how that will work out. But we'll keep fixing these in the OpenID4VC library. So you don't have to deal with that too much. I copied this slide from the OpenID Foundation pre-IW workshop, but just to give you an insight of, for example, like what kind of tests have we been running with this OpenID4VC library. There's one test now going on with the OpenID Foundation, and it's in collaboration with the NIST Center of Excellence, I think it's called, where we're doing basically having a scope from the OpenID4VP specification and trying to get Interop on it based on a subset of the specification, which currently mostly follows the high assurance Interop profile. So we focus on MDoc credentials, with draft 24 of the OpenID4VC specification. Yeah, there we use X509 certificate, specific algorithms for response encryption, and that we've been testing. And then we test with different wallets and different verifiers and just see, okay, what works out of the box, what doesn't work, can we easily fix it? And this also has resulted in numerous issues and pull requests to the OpenID4VC specification to make that more clear. For example, it wasn't fully specified how certain flows should work with including a key ID, which could lead to some implementations not knowing how to decrypt the response. These things have been clarified, and then hopefully in the final implementations that will not cause issues anymore. And then here are some of the results of Interop events we had. So we started with a smaller scope, so OpenID4VC and a digital credentials API with MDoc, unsigned request, an encrypted response. And then we started expanding on the scope. So also doing encrypted response, adding STJOT into the mix, and doing also signed requests. So as you can see here, this was the latest test suite. We had 6 verifiers, 5 wallets, and we had a pretty good success rate. As you can see, MDoc relatively well. STJOT also, signed requests still had some issues. And the next up is April 25, which is end of this week, where we're also going to test OpenID4VC credential issuance and start adding that into the interoperability testing scope. And yeah, it's it does get a bit hectic sometimes because it's a very manual process now. Like the Airways had a very nice Airways agent test harness, and there's also a certification suite from OpenID, but it's still more manual process now. I think also to just like find issues, but that can sometimes add complexity, because if you're interoperable now, doesn't really mean you'll be interoperable like in a few months, because the specs evolve so much. So yeah, and then the final thing is, like, we've been testing against OpenID conformance test suite, which has some like experimental tests for OpenID4VC wallets, but also OpenID4VC verifiers. And they're now starting to work also on the issuance part. And so what it will do is it will run a test suite against your wallet or verifier, and then perform a lot of checks on like how what is being described in the spec. And then you can see, okay, am I compliant or conformant to the specification? And finally, you could also, that's not enabled for the specification yet because they're also not final yet, but you can choose to publish your test results, and then it also allows you to get certified as a compliant implementation according to the OpenID conformance test suite. Which once we can do that, we of course want our implementation to get in that list as well. So any questions on OpenID4VC library or the Interop or anything?
You might have mentioned this, but does the OpenID conformance test suite take into account the different draft versions, or how does that work with the different draft versions?
Yeah, so as you can see, it has in the test name here ID3, which is implementers draft 3, which I think is draft 23 in this case. So it has for a few implementers, drafts, it has specific tests.
Cool, thanks.
Next library is DCQL TypeScript. DCQL is actually, it's part of the OpenID for verifiable presentations spec, but we decided to make it a separate library. Also, because we see value in using it in other places, for example, also DITCOM, because it's not necessarily tied to the OpenID4VC protocol. Well, it's defined in the specification, but in the end, it's quite a generic credential query language. So we created the TypeScript implementation of the DCQL language, and we currently have support for filtering and querying MDoc credentials and STJOT credentials, with most of the features that were defined in draft 24. So there's a lot of new features now in OpenID4VC draft 26, such as requesting multiple credentials for a single query. If you want multiple diplomas, for example, trusted authorities. So you can say, I want it to be assigned with this DIT or with this X509 certificate as root. And we're also at support for W3C credentials, which wasn't defined before yet. So this, I think, library has the best adoption for now. Verifiables is using it, and we have people opening issues. I don't know who they are, but that I think means they are using the library. So an example of a very simple DCQL query is below here, where you can specify, okay, which paths do I want to request from which credential in which format. And it's meant to be as a simpler replacement of presentation exchange. You do lose some features over diff presentation exchange, but yeah, it was simpler to implement from our experience. So yeah, there's some trade-offs there. So how you use the library is it's relatively simple. We have this DCQL library that you install in npm, and then basically what you do is you parse the DCQL query. So for example, this is a credential query you get as a wallet. You use the library to parse the query, and you validate the query, and then you run the query against a list of credentials. And the credentials are the credentials you have in your wallet. And how we do this is we, in our wallet, for example, we first run through the credentials. Like after we validate the query, we first loop through the credentials and extract the doc types and STJOT values. So we only fetch the records from storage, which could be a match. And then we pass that whole list of credentials to the libraries, and that will give exact matches on like, okay, this doc type matches and these claim name matches. Yeah, we have the full query result. I quickly wanted to show how it looks. I think I need to share my. Okay. Can you still see this, or?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. Yeah, so this is a very quick playground I built this morning with the help of AI. But basically, it uses this library in the browser and gives you like, yeah, the results of what the library does. So here you have your DCQL query, and here you have the credentials which you would have in your wallet. And here you can see the results that the library returns. So for example, let's say I want a query that asks for a driver's license, a vehicle registration, and an identity credential. So we have the driver's license in MDoc, the ID credential in STJOT format, which requests certain paths from the credential, and we have the vehicle registration credential. We have all these credentials in our wallet. And then here we can see the result. So basically what it will do, the library will return first, can this query be satisfied by the credentials in your wallet? And then it will give for each of the query. So this is driving license, which was requested here. We will say like whether it is successful, like can we match this query? And then it will also give you like what the output is. So as you can see, it matched here the MDL credential. And let me see. Yeah, so and it will also only include the fields that will be disclosed. So this can also help you determine, okay, which fields of the credential do I need to disclose when I share it. So because if we look at the MDL, we have given name and family name. I can add another claim here. And if we then look at the query result, it will now also include that property. So you can easily see, okay, what is the credential that we need to share. And separately, it also returns all matches, which give you why credentials didn't match, which is like generally you only have to look at this top level and just see like, okay, do we match or not? But it helps a lot with debugging to see like why didn't another credential match. So for example, we can see it didn't match against this other credential because it had the doc type for the mobile vehicle registration, while the query asks for an MDL, and that it does for all the attributes, and that just helps you identify the problems of when something is not matched. And it's very elaborate in this, but that's just more like, yeah, okay, why doesn't something match? And yeah, this generally supports a lot of the features. So like we can also do, for example, claim value matching. So let's say for the driving license, we want to make sure that the family name is, for example, Jackson. Now we see it's can be satisfied. If I were to set it to Clastra, it can't be satisfied anymore because the credential here is not in the values. Yeah, so just a lower level library that helps you with the matching. So yeah, if you want to try it out, you can go here to dcql.animo.id. I'll add a link here still for the source code, so you can also see how this library is being used. Yeah, and so it's up to you here as well to input. Like you need to input. We have for every credential format type, we expect a certain input. So for if the credential format is MSO MDoc, we expect you to provide a doc type and the namespace values. And if it's STJOT, we expect you to provide the VCT and the claim values. So that again, this library doesn't need to know anything about how a credential is encoded with CBOR or as a JOT or anything like that. You just give us the decoded payload and we just do the matching. Yeah, keeping this library very lightweight. Cool. And so we're also now testing this in the Interop event with like different features of the DCQL spec. So starting very simple and requesting like this field from this credential, but also now extending to, okay, I want this field from this credential or this field from this credential, or I want the first name or first name and last name, or I want the full name. So because there's quite a different variations possible in DCQL as well. Yeah, just make sure that when you implement these across wallet, that the behavior is the same. Okay, so the last library that we have contributed is a TypeScript implementation of OpenID Federation. This is definitely still the most experimental library of the 3 lab projects. We did an initial implementation, which we have done an integration into Credo for OpenID4VC, where we basically allow the authorization request to be signed by an OpenID Federation entity, and then a wallet can choose which federations it trusts, and that way you can establish trust in a verifier based on OpenID Federation. And I think, yeah, definitely the potential in OpenID Federation is the flexibility in how you define trust, and you can have a lot of granularity by having advanced roles and trust marks, but it needs to be specified. Will it need to be useful? Yeah, that's also where we noticed that there's still some things lacking. There is an OpenID Federation for wallet specification now, which already defines, okay, how do you do it with OpenID4VCI and OpenID4VP? But yeah, oftentimes trust is more granular than I trust this party because there's a root entity that I trust, that trust this party, but you usually want to know, okay, like, who is this organization? Why is it requesting data from the wallet and for what purpose? And like more granular control over that. Yeah, that's why we haven't created the full implementation yet, but the lower level library is already doing most of what the OpenID Federation standard requires, and we do we allow resolving trust chains and creating trust chains, but I think there's a lot of business logic involved here probably, and okay, how do you manage an OpenID Federation in a distributed manner, and also how do we know, like, okay, how do we define who can issue which credentials and these kind of things, which of course is also a limitation when you use X509 certificates. So you have the same problem. It's not something specific to OpenID Federation. So an example with this library is what we have is we provide a typed interface of how you can create an entity configuration. So you know which attributes need to be provided, and we also do the validation for that. And this is, for example, here you can create an entity configuration that you sign for yourself, where you can say with what are your cryptographic keys, and also you can include your OpenID reliant party, the OpenID4VP metadata that wallets can use. And then you can also include authority hints, which then point to the more higher level trust anchors that the wallet may trust. So we do all the validation in this library, and then you provide the callback to sign a job. So you do the crypto implementation again, but we help make sure that you create a valid configuration and return that as a signed job based on your callback that you provide. Yeah, so final library is the Expo Digital Credentials API. This is an experimental Android implementation we have been doing based on the W3C Digital Credentials API. I think the Multipass wallet presented here last week, right? I think they also talked about this, I would assume.
Yes, we did talk about this a bit last week with Multipass, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so because they're also one of the wallets implementing this, and we've been doing the Interop tests at OpenID with. But basically, what it allows you to do, it's only available on Android for now, but you can register credentials with the native platform with a matcher. And when a request is triggered from the browser or from another app, the Android system will run the DCQL query basically against all of the WASM matchers that are registered on Android and tries to find the wallet that can provide the credential, solving the wallet selection problem and only showing wallets that can actually present a credential. I think the API is very generic, and so you can support any credential format with it. For us, it did require a new implementation of DCQL that can be compiled to WASM, which TypeScript cannot. So here are some links, and I thought maybe I can show all these features integrated more on a higher level, because these are all very low level, but if you combine them all, you can actually build end user things with it as well. So let me share my. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So on the right side, I have a playground we built. I also have it here on in a web view. But basically, this combines all the features I showed into an example playground that can issue and verify and supports OpenID Federation and a digital credentials API. And so one thing I can do is if I select a request, for example, government identification, I use OpenID4VC draft 24, the digital credentials API in DCQL. I can show how this digital credentials API works. So if I do it, it will invoke the Android digital credentials API, and then it will show you the credentials that have been matched. So I have 2 credentials in my wallet now, and these have been registered by our wallet. So we can register, like the title, who's issued, and which claims are in there. And I can choose to continue. And this, from here on now, it's showing, this is our wallet UI again. So previously it was all the Android native system UI, but once you choose our wallet, in this case, it could be another wallet, but like our wallet, then you get to render the UI for the user to confirm the request. So in this case, we have a pin screen. I can choose to share it. And then I can see the verification is successful and which documents have been shared. Yeah, I think very nice thing about the digital credentials API is that it just integrates very nicely with the native platform. Especially on Android. I think on iOS, we'll probably see a lot more limited API. So I'll have to see, like, are we going to be able to register our wallet? And will it support all formats? I don't know. But the approach Android has taken is very generic and open, which means any wallet can register. You can support any format, and there's basically no restrictions. So yeah, and otherwise I can also go into our wallet itself. So basically with the digital credentials API, the user doesn't have to use your wallet. But this is a wallet we built based on Credo, and that integrates all these libraries. And so, for example, what we could do is, let's do a request for car rental. Don't know if I have them in my wallet. And select OpenID for OpenID Federation. I can scan it with my wallet. And we can see, this is, for example, using OpenID Federation in the background. And what we do here is, we have TurboKey, which is an organization, and it's part of 2 federations. And you can see it's, for example, trusted by the KVK, which is the Dutch Chamber of Commerce. So we know, like, it's a recognized organization. And we also see, for example, a Trustpilot mark, which could be issued to you when you get very good reviews or are registered or recognized. So, like, okay, this is the actual organization verified by turbo keys. And that's just to show, like, with OpenID Federation, you have very like broad ecosystems, or like it doesn't all have to be like government managed trust. It could also be like another reputable source that gives out trust marks, for example, and in that way, like you can choose whether you want to interact or trust an organization. So in this case, it says like, oh, this is a recognized organization, it's approved by external organizations. What I, for example, can also do if I go for the government identification and I request an MDoc also with OpenID Federation, it will now say like, okay, this is recognized and with a green check mark, and we can see, okay, this organization, like German government organization, is trusted by the European Union, and we have like hard coded the European Union in our wallet as, okay, this is a trusted root anchor that we really trust, and then we can really show like, okay, this is trusted. So in that way, you have like a very flexible way to manage trust. And then we can see we can handle the request. So under the hood, this is using DCQL. It used our DCQL query matching to find which credentials matched, and also we can see only these attributes will be shared from the credential. No other attributes will be shared. And then we can choose to share it, and then we will leverage the OpenID4VC implementation to share it. So you can see, like in this flow, we integrated the OpenID Federation library to resolve the trust chains and verify is this a trusted organization we're interacting with. Then we have DCQL to match our credentials in the wallet against what the verifier is requesting. And then we use the OpenID4VC library to pack it all up and send it as a response to the verifier. So yeah, you need to combine it all yourself, but it provides a nice foundation to build on. And then we also have the issue tab, where you can get credentials issued. I think that was most of what I wanted to tell. So I'm not sure if there's any questions. I've been talking for a long time.
Thank you so much. Really cool to see the demo that pulls it all together. I've got a question, but it looks like there are a few in the chat. Let's see, from Kim and Jim.
Oh yeah. So for Kim, does the DCQL support or in statements? Do you mean so like you have credential sets which allow you to specify which sets of credentials you want? So I think in that case you can do or on the credential level. And you have claim sets which allow you to define, I want this claim or this claim, for example, or this sets of claims. So I think that is the or statement. What do you mean specifically with in?
So the or statement specifically covers the use case that I want some sort of identification indicating identity. So for example, driver's license, passport, or identity card might all qualify, and you only need to return one of those. I suppose the in statement might be asking for as many of those that you have access to.
Okay, so like I want most of these, but all of them are optional, or
the in statement could be something discussed further in the future, but the or statement seems to make the most sense.
Well, that one is supported. I think in statement you probably can get quite far with doing a lot of options to the wallet, but then it will of course make it harder to understand the query. But or is definitely supported on both the credential level and the claim level. Expected time for the Android API to be ready. I don't know when. I probably will. I think for now it is already ready to use if you enable like an experimental flag in Chrome, but otherwise it's fully ready to integrate with. So I'm not sure when it will go final or when they will say like this is ready for production.
I was wondering, now that these are in the OpenWallet Foundation, are there working groups where people can get involved? What help is needed?
Yeah, so well, we have the repositories I added at the end of the slides, and we have issues there. And so if you want something or want to contribute, yeah, I think looking at the issues is a good place. We don't really have working group calls yet, also because we haven't seen that much adoption yet. So we now mostly handled it in the Credo working group call still. And we have the Discord channels. Each of the libraries has a Discord channel where you can ask questions.
Oh, awesome. Cool, good to know. Let's see, are there other questions for Timo?
Okay, then if no further questions, then thanks everyone for joining the presentation, and yeah, feel free to open any issues or ask me any questions about any of the libraries if you're interested in using them.
Great. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate the presentation and demo. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome. Cool. I think we can go ahead and call it there. Thanks everyone for joining, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
everybody. We'll see you all next week. We'll put out a note on Discord with the agenda for next Monday, hopefully the next day or so. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so